There are houses, there are mansions. And then there are places that seem to exist outside of time entirely. This is Waddesdon Manor, a Loire Valley chateau transplanted to an English hill by one of the most powerful families in human history. To understand Waddesdon, you need to understand the family behind it. The Rothschilds began in a cramped Frankfurt ghetto in the late 18th century, when a coin dealer named Meyer Amschel sent his 5 sons to 5 different European capitals with a simple instruction: work together, share intelligence, and keep the money moving. It worked. Before the telegraph existed, the Rothschilds had their own private courier network crossing borders that stopped everyone else. They emerged from the Napoleonic Wars richer than most nations. They financed the British purchase of the Suez Canal and bankrolled the railroads that stitched Europe together. It is within this dynasty that Waddesdon belongs to one specific man. A man defined not by power but by grief. Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild was born in 1839, more aesthete than banker, more collector than deal-maker. In 1865 he married his cousin Evelina, and by all accounts it was a genuine love match. 1 year later she died in childbirth. The baby died too. Ferdinand never remarried. He never really recovered. Instead, he did what extraordinarily wealthy people sometimes do with unbearable pain. He built something. In 1874, he purchased a wind-swept, treeless hill in Buckinghamshire called Lodge Hill. He hired French architect Gabriel Hippolyte Destailleur and gave him one instruction: build me a French Renaissance chateau, not inspired by one, an actual one, here, on this hill in England. What followed was, by any reasonable measure, extraordinary. Every stone was imported from Caen in Normandy. A specially built tramway was constructed just to haul materials up the hill, and he wanted full-grown trees, so full-grown trees appeared. He didn't want saplings, he wanted mature, full-grown specimens, beeches, oaks, chestnuts, that would make the manor look as if it had always been there. So teams of enormous Percheron draft horses dragged fully grown trees up the hill and planted them. Hundreds of trees. The effort reportedly killed several of the horses. Construction ran from 1874 to 1889. By completion, Waddesdon had 45 principal rooms, a palatial stable block and grounds designed by French landscaper Élie Lainé that transformed that bare hilltop into a paradise of fountains, parterres and woodland walks. The aviary, still operating today, was Ferdinand's particular joy, stocked with rare exotic birds from around the world. The building, with its steep conical towers, echoes Chateau de Maintenon. The central staircase tower is pure Chateau de Blois. The carved stone dormers, the elaborate skyline of chimneys and pinnacles. This is 16th century French architecture, executed in the 1870s and 80s on an English hill. If the exterior announces power, the interior is where Ferdinand's true obsession reveals itself. Waddesdon was never a quiet country home. It was a stage, built for display, for entertainment, for the housing of one of the greatest collections of French decorative arts ever assembled outside the Louvre. The Sèvres porcelain collection includes pieces made for French royalty under Louis XV. The carpets were woven for Versailles. The furniture includes pieces that once stood in Marie Antoinette's private apartments at the Tuileries. You can stand in front of them today. The paintings, Gainsborough, Reynolds, Rubens, Boucher, hang floor to ceiling in the Victorian fashion, and the dinner parties held beneath them were legendary. Edward VII, then Prince of Wales, was a frequent and prized guest. He ate Ferdinand's food, shot his pheasants, drank his wine, and confided things that never made it into the official record. The Rothschilds, after all, had built their empire partly on discretion. You don't remain banker to half the crowned heads of Europe by talking too much. Ferdinand died here in 1898, quietly, in his sleep. The estate passed to his sister Alice, known with both affection and considerable fear as the All-Powerful. Where Ferdinand was melancholic, Alice was formidable. She ran Waddesdon with military precision and had opinions about everything, particularly the gardens, which she expanded relentlessly. She's said to have reduced grown gardeners to tears on a regular basis. Edward VII continued to visit. The story goes that a member of his entourage once broke a piece of Sèvres porcelain. Alice turned to the culprit and said, without raising her voice, "Don't apologise. It is irreplaceable, but we will say no more about it." Then stared at him for the rest of dinner. The piece had been made for Louis XVI. Alice died in 1922, leaving Waddesdon to her great-nephew James de Rothschild, the son of Edmund de Rothschild, known as the benefactor for his financial support of Jewish settlement in Palestine, the man who essentially helped lay the groundwork for what would become the State of Israel. James was different from Ferdinand and Alice. He was warmer, more outgoing, a passionate horseman and racehorse owner. He married Dorothy Pinto in 1913, and Dorothy would become one of the defining figures in Waddesdon's story. The interwar years at Waddesdon were, by all accounts, golden. James and Dorothy entertained lavishly. The guest list shifted with the times, like politicians, writers, intellectuals. Winston Churchill was a visitor. So were figures from the emerging Zionist movement, the world of art and horse racing. But underneath that glittering surface, something very dark was gathering in Europe. The Nazis were obsessed with the Rothschilds. They'd been the central villains in European anti-Semitic mythology for over a century, and Nazi propaganda elevated that obsession to genocidal intensity. When the Anschluss came in 1938, they moved immediately on the Austrian branch, arresting Louis von Rothschild at Vienna airport as he tried to escape and holding him for over a year, releasing him only in exchange for the family's entire Austrian industrial holdings. He left with nothing. The palaces were stripped. Entire trainloads of art, furniture and porcelain assembled over generations were seized and redistributed to party officials or earmarked for Hitler's planned museum in Linz. It was the largest institutionalized art theft in history. At Waddesdon, James and Dorothy acted fast. The most precious items, the Sèvres, the royal furniture, the finest paintings, were packed into crates and moved to safe storage away from the manor. The manor itself was requisitioned during the war and became a refuge for children evacuated from London, hundreds of them running through the French Renaissance rooms, sleeping in the bachelor's wing, a palace built for the display of civilization's finest achievements given over temporarily to children fleeing bombs. The collection survived, the family survived. Waddesdon doesn't advertise ghost tours, but among those who spend long hours in the building, there are stories. The most persistent involves the East Corridor, a long upper floor gallery lined with paintings. Staff have reported the sensation of being watched while walking it alone in the early morning, before the house opens. One former guide described hearing footsteps continuing after her own had stopped. Ferdinand is the name most often whispered. A man who built this place out of grief, who died within its walls, who poured everything he had into its rooms. If any spirit has reason to linger, it might be his. The blue Sèvres room, his most personal space, is where visitors most often report an unexpected wave of sadness upon entering, unconnected to anything they were thinking moments before. Just grief, moving through the air like a draft from somewhere. The aviary too has its stories. Keepers have occasionally reported hearing what sounds like bird song in deep winter when no birds are present. After the war, Dorothy bequeathed Waddesdon to the National Trust. It was Jacob Rothschild, the fourth Baron who died in 2024, who oversaw its sweeping 1990s restoration, returning it to Ferdinand's original vision and transforming it into the world-class cultural institution it is today. There's a 5-arrow crest above every gate at Waddesdon. It's the Rothschild family symbol representing the 5 sons Meyer Amschel sent out across Europe. 5 arrows bound together, impossible to break. It's a symbol of family, of solidarity, of the idea that power properly organised cannot be destroyed. Today, Waddesdon Manor is open to the public in Buckinghamshire, England. The collection, the grounds, the aviary and the wine cellar are all available to visit. If you enjoyed this architectural journey back in time, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more extraordinary monuments and the figures who built them. See you in the next one.